The crescent moon, in Sumerian art, and in Sumerian theology, and in the Sumerian night sky, was a boat. Not like a boat. A boat. The god who lived in it was named Nanna, and he was one of the oldest and most important gods in the entire Mesopotamian pantheon, worshipped from before 3500 BCE, and his symbol, the horizontal crescent with its points upward like the prow and stern of a reed vessel, was understood literally. The crescent was Nanna's barge, and he sailed it across the night sky the way a man sails a boat across a river, and when the moon was full, the barge was loaded, and when the moon was dark, the barge had docked, and the cycle of the month was the cycle of a voyage, departure to arrival to departure again, and the Sumerians built their calendar on it. Their months began when the first sliver of the new crescent appeared in the west, after sunset. The boat had launched. The month had started. Time itself was measured by the movements of Nanna's vessel. This is not fringe. This is mainstream Assyriology, attested in thousands of texts, carved on cylinder seals you can see in museums, written in the oldest literature on Earth. The poem called The Journey of Nanna to Nippur describes the moon god loading his crescent boat with trees, plants, and animals, sailing down the Euphrates, stopping at 5 cities along the way, and arriving at Nippur to feast with his father Enlil. It is a real poem, you can read it. The boat is the crescent. The god sails in it, the journey is the month. Nanna's temple at the Ekeshnugal, whose ziggurat still stands in the desert of southern Iraq and is one of the best preserved structures from the ancient world, was the docking point of the vessel, the harbor where the moon came to rest, and the daughter of King Sargon the Great, a woman named Enheduanna, served as Nanna's high priestess there around 2300 BCE, and became the first named author in human history. The first person to sign a written work signed it in the service of the moon, so when a scribe at calls the moon a vessel, he is not inventing a metaphor, he is using the standard theological language of his time. But most of the texts that call the moon a vessel mean vessel the way we mean vehicle, a thing that carries a god across the sky. The tablet we are here for means vessel the way you mean container, a thing that holds something inside it. And the difference between a vehicle and a container is the difference between a boat that carries a passenger and a jar that holds what was sealed in it. The tablet catalogued as UE 7788 came from the deep levels at from the same precinct that produced the royal tombs and the great mass of religious material that Woolley's excavations brought to light in the 1920s and 1930s. It was classified as a hymn to Nanna, standard lunar devotional type, and shelved with the rest of the moon god material, of which there is a great deal, because was Nanna's city, and every season of digging produced more hymns to him. UE 7788 opens with the standard lunar imagery, the crescent, the light, the voyage. The first scholar to read it past the opening, in 2015, found that it drops the devotional voice, after 7 lines and shifts, to the voice of a builder, and the builder is not Nanna. The builder is describing Nanna's vessel not as a chariot for a god but as a constructed object, and the construction is the subject. The builder, whom the text does not name but identifies by his function, the one who shaped the vessel, describes the moon the way a shipwright describes a hull, from the inside out. He says the vessel was made in 2 halves, fitted together and sealed. He says the interior is not empty. He says the vessel was loaded before it was sealed and the cargo was placed inside before the vessel was put in the sky, and the sealing was done so the cargo would not be exposed to what is outside the vessel, and the placement in the sky was done so the cargo would not be reachable from below. The builder does not name the cargo. He describes it only as the things that were removed from the earth before the people were allowed to walk on it. The language here matches, almost exactly, the theology of the Enuma Elish, where Marduk builds the world by arranging the body of Tiamat and assigning the gods their stations, and specifically the passage in Tablet 5 where Marduk assigns the moon its duties. In the standard Enuma Elish, Marduk tells the moon to mark the months, to wax and wane, to be the jewel of the night. The assignment is astronomical. The moon is given a job, the keeping of time, and the keeping of time is its purpose. UE 7788 says the keeping of time is the cover story. The purpose of the vessel is not to carry a god, and not to mark the months. The purpose is to hold the cargo above the earth, where the earth cannot reach it and it cannot reach the earth. Circling, sealed, visible but inaccessible, for as long as the vessel holds. If you read the oldest text for what the builders actually recorded rather than what the hymns were allowed to say, this channel is built for that. We take one of these apart every week. Stay with this one, because the modern science of the moon is strange enough to earn the comparison, And the comparison does not require you to believe the tablet. It requires you to notice the shape. The moon should not exist the way it does. That is not a mystical claim. It is a statement of planetary science, and the strangeness has been a problem since we started measuring. The leading theory of how the moon formed is the giant impact hypothesis. Roughly 4.5 billion years ago, a body the size of Mars, sometimes called Theia, collided with the early Earth. The impact was so violent it liquefied the surface of the planet and threw a vast cloud of molten debris into orbit, and from that cloud the moon condensed. The theory explains the moon's composition, which is similar to Earth's mantle but depleted in iron, consistent with the impacting body's core merging with Earth's core, while the lighter mantle material was flung into space. The theory is the scientific consensus, and it is probably correct, and it describes the most violent event in the history of our planet, an impact so large it effectively rebuilt the Earth and produced a companion body that has been circling it ever since. And the companion is strange. Relative to its planet, our moon is the largest satellite in the solar system. Mars has 2 tiny captured asteroids. Jupiter and Saturn have moons, but they are small compared to their enormous hosts. Our moon is roughly a quarter the diameter of Earth. That ratio is not normal. It is, as far as we can tell, unique in the solar system, and the uniqueness matters because of what the moon does. The moon stabilizes Earth's axial tilt. Without it, the tilt of the Earth's axis, the tilt that gives us seasons, would vary chaotically over millions of years, swinging from nearly 0 to over 50 degrees, and the climate would become so unstable that complex life as we know it would probably not survive. The moon holds the tilt steady, within a narrow range, and it has been doing this for billions of years, and without it you would not be here. That is not theology. That is published planetary science. The moon drives the tides. The tides cycle the oceans, move nutrients, create the intertidal zones where some researchers believe the transition from sea life to land life may have begun. Remove the moon and the tides drop to a fraction of their current strength, driven only by the much more distant sun, and the coastlines of the world become static, and one of the engines that may have driven the origin of life on land stops running. The moon produces perfect solar eclipses. The moon is roughly 400 times smaller than the sun. The sun is roughly 400 times farther from the Earth than the moon. The result is that from the surface of the Earth, the moon and the sun appear almost exactly the same size in the sky, and during a total solar eclipse, the moon covers the sun so precisely that only the corona, the outer atmosphere, is visible. This is a coincidence. There is no physical reason for it. It is simply what happens to be true right now, in this epoch, because the moon is slowly moving away from the Earth at a rate of 3.8 centimeters per year. And in the distant past it was closer and covered more than the sun. And in the distant future it will be farther and will not cover the sun at all. And right now, in the window of time that happens to include the existence of human beings, the fit is almost perfect. The Sumerians, who feared eclipses more than any other omen and built an entire ritual apparatus around them, would have found the precision of the fit unsurprising. When a lunar eclipse occurred, the scholars of the court read it as a sentence of death on the king, and the response was the substitute king ritual, in which the real king stepped down from the throne and a replacement, a prisoner or a gardener, he was dressed in royal robes and seated in the king's place and treated as king for up to 100 days, and then killed, so that the death the eclipse demanded would find the wrong man in the seat. We covered this in an earlier video. The ritual is real, attested in the scholars' own letters, and the letters discuss the scheduling with the tone of men arranging a tax payment. The eclipse was the most feared event in the Mesopotamian sky, and the moon was the body that produced it, and the god who rode in the vessel was the god who covered the sun and triggered the death. Nanna was not just a lamp. Nanna was a weapon. The vessel was capable of covering the sun so precisely that it killed kings. And the assignment of the moon in the Enuma Elish is worth reading closely, because the language is specific. In Tablet 5, Marduk places the moon in the sky and says, "He assigned to the moon the night, to make known the days, and month by month, without ceasing to provide with his crown. At the beginning of the month, rising over the land, your horns shine to make known 6 days. On the 7th day, the crown is half. The 15th day shall be the midpoint." The language is instruction. Marduk is programming the moon the way you program a clock, telling it when to show its phases and in what order, and the programming assumes the moon is not doing this on its own. It is doing it because it was told to. The moon, in the standard creation text, is an instrument set to a function by a hand that is not its own. UE 7788 says the function Marduk announced is real, but is not the primary function. The primary function is the cargo. And the moon rang. In November 1969, during the Apollo 12 mission, the crew deliberately crashed the ascent stage of the lunar module into the surface after they were done with it, and the seismometers they had planted recorded the impact. And the moon vibrated. It vibrated for over 55 minutes. It rang the way a bell rings, and the signal did not damp the way it would in solid rock. Subsequent missions repeated the experiment with larger impacts, and the results were the same. The moon vibrates when struck, and it vibrates for far longer than a solid body should. The explanation is structural. The moon's upper crust is dry and fractured, and the fractures allow seismic waves to bounce and reverberate rather than being absorbed. It is a property of the geology, not a mystery. But the sound of it, a world that rings when you hit it, that hums for an hour after a single impact, is the sound of a hollow vessel, and the scientists who reported it used exactly that word. It rang like a bell, and we never see the other side. The moon is tidally locked to the Earth, meaning it rotates on its axis at exactly the same rate it orbits the Earth, so the same face always points toward us. The far side, the side that faces away, was never seen by any human being until 1959, when the Soviet Luna 3 probe photographed it. And the far side looks nothing like the near side. The near side has the Maria, the dark plains of ancient lava flows that make up the face you see when you look up. The far side is almost entirely highlands, bright, cratered, rough, with almost no Maria at all. The two halves of the moon do not match. The crust on the far side is thicker than the crust on the near side, and no one has fully explained why. The asymmetry is real, measured, and open. The moon has two faces, and it keeps one of them turned away from us at all times, and the one it keeps turned away is the one that does not look like the other. The scribe of UE, 7788, did not know any of this. He did not know about Theia. He did not know the moon stabilizes the tilt or drives the tides or fits the sun with clockwork precision during an eclipse. He did not know it rings when struck. He did not know it has a far side that looks nothing like the near side, or that it keeps that side permanently turned away. He sat in in the city of the moon god, in the shadow of the ziggurat built for Nanna's harbor, and he wrote that the moon is a vessel, built in two halves, sealed, loaded with cargo before it was placed in the sky, and that the cargo was the things removed from the earth before the people were allowed to walk on it. The scribe makes three claims about the cargo, and the three claims are the part no other text contains. First, the cargo is old, older than the people, older than the cities, older than the ground in its current form. The cargo was on the earth when the earth was new, meaning after Tiamat's body was laid out but before the gods had populated the surface, and it was removed during the preparation, taken off the earth the way you clear a site before you build on it, and placed in the vessel, and sealed, and put in the sky. The earth you walk on was clean before you arrived. What was cleaned off it is above you. Second, the cargo is not dead. The builder uses a verb that the scholar glossed as keeps, or persists, or endures, and the verb is in the continuous form, meaning the cargo is not stored in the way grain is stored, inert and waiting. It is stored the way a living thing is stored, contained, restrained, still doing what it does but doing it inside the vessel instead of on the ground. The vessel does not preserve, it confines. Third, the cargo cannot be put back. This is the line that distinguishes UE 7788 from every other text that describes the moon as a container. The builder says the cargo was removed from the earth because the earth with the cargo on it was not a place the people could survive, and the removal was not punishment and not housekeeping. It was the precondition. The earth with those things on it was not the earth. It became the earth when they were taken off. The vessel in the sky is not storage. It is quarantine, and the vessel must hold, and the face must stay turned, and the orbit must not change, because if the cargo returns to the surface returns to what it was before the people, and what it was before the people was not a place for people. And then the line the scholar sat with for 3 months before she discussed it with anyone. The builder, still speaking, says the vessel was placed so that one side always faces the earth. Not by accident, by design. The sealed side, the loaded side, faces away, and the empty side, the hull, the outer shell, faces toward us. And the facing is maintained, and will be maintained, and the reason the vessel shows us only one face is the reason a jar on a shelf shows you only its lid, because the opening is on the other side, and the opening is not open, it is sealed. But the seal is on the far side, facing the dark, And if you could get behind the vessel and look at the side it does not show you, you would see not a second landscape but a door. The cross-cultural echo is there, and it is quieter than the others in this series, but it is real. In Hindu cosmology, the moon contains the soma, the divine nectar of immortality, and the waxing and waning of the moon is the gods drinking the soma, and the soma refilling, a vessel being emptied and filled. In Chinese mythology, the moon holds Chang'e, a woman who drank an elixir of immortality and was carried to the moon and has lived there ever since, alone, in a palace, with a jade rabbit for company. The moon in both traditions is not a rock. It is a container, and the container holds something that should not be on the earth. The soma is too powerful for mortals. Chang'e's immortality was not meant for her. The pattern is the same. A thing that belongs in the sky because it was too dangerous or too important or too powerful to be left on the ground. Placed in the moon. Sealed. Circling above us where we can see it every night and never reach it. The scholar who read UE 7788 prepared a partial transliteration in 2017 and shared it with two colleagues at institutions that hold material. One found the text consistent with the known 3 literary tradition and noted the builder's voice as unusual but not unprecedented in Nanna hymns, which sometimes include craftsman god perspectives. The other raised the concern that the vessel as container reading depends on a distinction between two nearly identical signs, one meaning vehicle and one meaning storage vessel, and the distinction on the clay is ambiguous. The question has not been resolved. The transliteration is unpublished. The tablet is in one of the two museums that split the material, catalogued, stored, and not on display. It is filed as a hymn to Nanna. Hymns to Nanna are not rare, and they are not urgent, and the drawer holds many of them. So here is where it sits. The Sumerians called the crescent moon Nanna's boat. That is published and real and carved in stone in half a dozen major museums. The Journey of Nanna to Nippur is a real poem in which the moon god loads his crescent vessel and sails. In Hedwana, the first named author in history served the moon at Ur. The giant impact hypothesis says the moon was born from the most violent collision in the history of the planet. The moon stabilizes the tilt that makes life possible. It drives the tides that may have started life on land. It fits the sun during eclipses with a precision that has no physical explanation. It rang for 55 minutes when Apollo 12 hit it. It keeps one face permanently turned away from us, and that face looks nothing like the one it shows us, and the asymmetry has not been explained. None of that needs the tablet. What needs the tablet is the builder's voice. A vessel made in two halves, sealed, loaded with cargo, before it was placed in the sky. The cargo being the things removed from the earth before anyone was allowed to walk on it. The facing maintained, so the sealed side stays turned away. And the line the scholar held for 3 months. The reason you see only one side is the reason you see only the lid of a jar. Because the opening is on the other side. And it is closed. Tonight the moon will rise the way it always does, showing you the face it has shown every human being who has ever looked up. The Maria, the dark plains, the familiar pattern. The far side will face the dark. You will not see it. No one on the ground ever has without a spacecraft, and the spacecraft that photographed it found a surface so different from the near side that the asymmetry is still being studied, and the vessel is leaving. That is the part no one talks about when they talk about the moon. It is moving away from the Earth, 3.8 centimeters per year, a crawl, barely measurable, but constant, and it has been constant for a very long time, which means the moon was closer in the past, much closer, and the tides were stronger, and the days were shorter, and the vessel loomed larger in the sky than it does now. It is retreating. Slowly, over hundreds of millions of years, the vessel that stabilizes the tilt and drives the tides and covers the sun and holds whatever it holds is pulling away from the Earth, and in the far future the eclipses will stop because the moon will be too far away to cover the sun, and the tilt will begin to wander, and the planet will change in ways we cannot model because we have never lived on an Earth without the moon holding it steady. The scribe would have called this the loosening. The vessel holds, but it does not hold forever, and the orbit is not fixed, and the distance is growing, and the seal that keeps the cargo above and the Earth below is not as close as it was when the vessel was loaded. The scribe would not have been surprised. The scribe would have said you are looking at the bottom of a jar, and the jar is sealed, and the seal is on the other side, and the things inside it were placed there before you arrived, and they have been circling above you every night for longer than your species has existed, and the vessel holds, and the vessel shows you nothing, and the vessel has not been opened since it was loaded. The question is not whether the moon is beautiful. The question is, what is on the other side of the face it shows you? If this changed the way the moon looks tonight, subscribe. Next week, another tablet from the same precinct at found in the same deposit, that does not describe the vessel, but records the one night the priests of Nanna observed something on the face of the moon that was not a shadow, and not a crater, and not a phase, and what they wrote on the temple wall before they sealed the observatory. The video on screen goes further into the texts that were filed as hymns and turned out to be engineering notes. The vessel is older than the harbor, and the harbor was built because the vessel was already there.